I can give a quick demo. So following on some of the abstract model object work, we now have the ability to do abstract models entirely. So not just views or fields that are, the logic associated with it. We can actually do a full model. You can imagine this being applied to kind of like a hub and spoke uh, you know, process. It does not currently manage any remote access. So the project, the model has to be on the in the organization for us. And also, too, models today still have to be tied to a connection, so they're a little bit less abstract than maybe we would like, but we'll sort of relax that too. But just to show you've got now this abstract property on a model. I've got an abstract view that's defined here that's just creating a full name and like some metadata on it. I've got another model here that's on the same connection today. It extends that current abstract model, and then inside this user view, it's referencing this abstract view. And just to show you what it looks like here is that abstract field name being pulled through. So we're effectively able to have a little bit more of a dry, don't repeat yourself process to define these things. You can imagine this being like a templated analysis. You could have complicated logic for applying a certain definition for a metric or a certain definition for a dimension across multiple different tables or multiple different departments or something like that. So that's the start, and uh, we'll keep iterating on this so that you can do things like reference a potentially a model that's in Git, and you can have sort of a little bit more abstraction and manage that process too.
Are there any broad changes we plan to make to like remote dependency stuff?
Relative to like
Like relative to Looker.
uh
Like is there stuff that we feel like we got wrong the first time that we need to adjust our philosophy on?
I mean, the editing experience for Looker was truly terrible. Like our composed, IDE is a really elegant way to effectively have these multiple different layers extending each other and having composition. Would love to figure out a way to get that into our editing process. So like you can see effectively the resolved object that we you say you're in that user's view, you pull in full name, you can see that object and potentially even edit that object, but it'll basically be just a diff on top of it too, which is sort of intrinsic to it. It won't work out of the box, but it's intrinsic to how our IDE works, so it should be doable to do that. Aside from that, I don't know, Stephen, I don't know if you have any thoughts too, and I also too. Stephen was instrumental in this as always. So thank you, and Conrad too helped out a bunch for the thoughts.
Yeah, I don't have any really thought about it a lot. Um, I, I don't think there's anything wrong with pointing it at a Git repo rather than having something on the same instance, but don't, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, we'll probably have to do some package management, like versioning. So like, hey, pulling in a specific version of a remote project and updating that. But I don't have firm views of what we should improve yet either.
Is the idea that there would always be elements of the shared model that live in these abstract models?
So not necessarily. It could potentially, you could imagine having other layers too. So like you can imagine having, if you're replicating Facebook ad data from Fivetran, we have a schema model that we automatically infer from the data warehouse. You could apply also a model potentially below the schema model, or below the shared model on top of the schema model that would look something like a template analysis or block that you'd see inside Looker, where like you're building predefined things that could then be, they could be abstract things that are applied directly to the tables. They could also be non-abstract, sort of more direct on top of, specific tables that are present inside that Fivetran schema. I don't actually know. We have not, just to be clear too, we have not built that yet. This will allow for sort of like a crude hub and spoke kind of a workflow. You could define, and encapsulate logic, for the central organization in one place, and then basically apply that to a bunch of different tables or interfaces. But like there may be more elegant ways do that too, with sort of in a layered approach also.
Good.
But
I'm just thinking about some of the use cases you get sometimes with, like, let's say I'm a game studio and I've lots of different games and I've lots of different, like, they've got, let's say, a data set across each of those games, and it's the same. I think some of them might want to put some of the schema model stuff in there just for brevity. I know it won't make a difference from a functional perspective, but they might prefer to not have those fields, even though they're not really maintaining those fields, to not have those fields be repeated over and over again in each view file. But anyway, yeah, that's
no,
just a thought.
I think that like that's completely reasonable too, and we may want like the abstraction to be sort of like a lower level too, so it's a little bit easier to reason about. So I think that's kind of probably a little bit to be determined, but like certainly want to improve this and make sure it's easy to like the dev experience. I think is actually kind of the most important piece. Like we've got all of the power already, really, even in like our query workbook shared schema models. You can kind of do a lot of composition and a lot of reuse of logic. We just want to make it so that it's easy to develop in also.
And that's a really good point though, Liam, that we need to think about what exactly shows up in Git for one of the things that is inheriting off one of these, because it's kind of weird if there are some choices to be made there for sure, of like what exactly do we show to the user as this is the model.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and maybe worth noting too, just along those lines, these things can be like nested extensions also. So like you could have an abstract view that's extended by another abstract view that's extended by another abstract, sort of on and on to allow for some encapsulation and sort of dry logic. But it's the dev experience there, at least today, you just have to keep it all in your head as opposed to being able to see the resolution of it.